What I found when I was traveling throughout the world, and I lecture in about 85 cities a year, is that people were looking for disciplines and techniques in order to make their lives much more meaningful and deeper. And since Kabbalah is the oldest wisdom teaching in existence, it makes a lot of sense that we bring into the world today the teachings to make people's lives better. So I had this feeling that a lot of the books in Kabbalah were so esoteric or so removed that they didn't have practical implementation into people's lives. So what I wanted to do was to move away from the Kabbalah that was esoteric and move much more to a practical approach, whereby people could interpolate the principles and the disciplines and the teachings into everyday life. Not something they would do at leisure, but something which would help them in their everyday activity of relationships, personal management, self-understanding. So one of the important approaches is through the medium of what we call Hasidism. Chabad Hasidism took the teachings of Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is very cryptic, it's very, very difficult, it's encoded, it's written mostly in Aramaic, and translated it into a format where people today could use it. So I'll give you an example. One of the teachings is that we should never practice negative emotions. For example, never to express anger. And people say that you can't stop yourself, it's natural, God created it. How can there possibly be a way of never expressing it? So comes along Kabbalah and teaches the way of flow of emotions and the nature of the mind, and has a very sophisticated model on consciousness, but one which allows us to practice the elements of mind and the elements of emotion. This is not an opportunity to teach all of it, but let me give you an example. Every one of us has his or her own way of drawing thoughts into the head. Where does the thought come from? Where does the thought originate? Is it possible to change the way that we create the thought? So Kabbalah teaches us ways of recreating the thought so that the way we interpret people, the way we interpret circumstances, becomes a way where we don't have to express anger, where we don't have to practice negative emotions. So you would say this kind of Kabbalah is a bit like psychology. And it is, because Kabbalah, which is the deepest teaching of the Torah, the Jewish way, is the way where we understand in depth personality, in depth the nature of the world. And therefore, if we understand personality in the world, there is psychology, there is philosophy, there are wisdoms, there are practical disciplines like meditation and focusing. So it has very real application to everyday life. So what I wanted to write in the book was to take people who were very interested in learning how to change the way they think and feel and approach the Kabbalistic principles into their life in a way which would change that. And under those circumstances create much better quality of life. I wrote the book simply because I don't believe in complications. It's not too simple because anything which is of effect in people's lives can't be too simplistic. But on the other hand, I am very much against those practitioners of so-called Kabbalah that don't relate it to the original source material, to the wisdoms of the Torah as such. Or those that just focus on one thing and pretend it's magic and all you have to do is wear red strings, or all you have to do is say a formula or repeat it several times. I don't believe in all that. I believe at the end of the day, wisdom, requires discipline and practical application. And what I did in the book was to take the steps, each step of the 10 sephirot, the 10 energies that make up the nature of the world and the nature of the personality. And in analysing each of these 10, we are afforded a way of becoming more masterful, becoming more profound, more understanding. And that way we'll be able to have enriched relationships, we'll be able to manage our lives much, much better, and we'll be able to respond to the problems of the world as a society in a much, much more successful way than what obviously the headlines of the newspapers are informing us today. One of the barriers, one of the challenges is language, because the original Hebrew is a language which goes to the nature of spiritual reality, the shape of the letters, the way in which the letters are sounded represent cosmic forces. And therefore, Hebrew is a very special language that explains Kabbalah. Therefore, to take it from Hebrew and to put it into English the way I did is a very, very enormous task, and we aren't able to always capture the nuance exactly. I tried very hard. So I can imagine how much more difficult it was to then take the teachings and translate it again into Italian. And I had the wonderful fortune of having a wonderful translator in Daniela who did a remarkable job. And I'm hoping that through the language of Italian and English, we are being true to the sounds of the cosmic forces which are in the original Hebrew, which describe the higher reality of the world. This is explained in the book, and I'm hoping that the reader will be able to get very much enjoyment and very much excitement, the same way as I did in writing the book myself.